Welcome to Office 2013 class video number 37. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, and this workbook is for videos 35 to 39, click on the link below the video or go to our class website. We're still studying Excel. This is Excel Basics 19, and this is an exciting video because we get to talk more about SUMIFs and COUNTIFs. How to add and count with criteria or conditions. Now, all we've done so far in the class with COUNTIFs and SUMIFs is to use the two functions with one condition. But in this video, we want to see how to, with COUNTIFs, count with one or more condition or criteria, and SUMIFs, add with one or more conditions or criteria. Now, I emphasize this because I've been teaching this class a long time and people still get confused. Which one do you use for which? Just look at the word count. That means you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at the word sum. That means add. So you're adding. When it finds two different matches, it's going to try and add some numbers. All right, counting, adding. Now, here's a list of all the functions we've actually covered so far. And we've already seen COUNTIFs and SUMIFs in Office Video 21 and Excel Basics 3 and a bunch of other videos. But this will be the first time we use more than one condition or criteria. Now, we will also introduce comparative operators used in the criteria argument. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and not. Now, we've already used a few comparative operators, but here we're going to see them explicitly in the criteria argument. And don't forget, math has one symbol for greater than and a single symbol for greater than or equal to, but not in Excel or Access. We have to actually type two characters, greater than and then an equal sign. Same for less than or equal to. Less than and then an equal sign. There'll be two characters. That's different than math. Now let's scroll down and look at some examples. We're going to start with a small data set and look at a couple examples on the small data set, and then we have a bigger data set below we'll look at. Now, let's just start by reminding ourselves, for count, we're going to use COUNTIFs. And for adding, we're going to use SUMIFs, and we'll do one criteria. And we'll look at text, date here. Now remember, dates and times are numbers. They're serial numbers. So text, numbers, and then sometimes we use comparative operator with numbers for our criteria. So we'll look at each one of these for counting, and then each one of these for adding. All right, let's start here. Our goal is, with text criteria, find out how many transactions do we have for green kale. Now, if we were doing this by hand, we'd have to go through, and every time we found a green kale, we'd say true, true, true. 3 trues, so we'd come up here and get a count of 3. We can use COUNTIFs. COUNTIFs, criteria range. That word range means that's when you highlight the whole column with all the possible criteria. So I'm going to highlight all of the products over here, all the produce, comma, and then I'm going to put for criteria. Notice it doesn't say criteria range. It's just, hey, what do you want me to count? I want you to count green kale. And COUNTIFs will take this text criteria, a single condition, and count. Control Enter. There are 3. We can do the same thing for date. We have transactions here. Each one of these lines or records is a transaction, and we just want to count how many sales or how many transactions we had on 8/14. So COUNTIFs, criteria range. Range means all of the potential values, the whole column, comma, criteria. I don't see the word range, so that just means, hey, what do you want me to count? I want you to count 8/14/2013. Now that's a number, so we'll go through that date column and find all the 8/14s, and it tells us 6 transactions on 8/14. Now here we have greater than 100. We want to look through this column and actually count transactions where there were more than 100 crates sold. So we can see with our eyes there's 3. Now this greater than 100 we saw this in an earlier video. When we put the comparative operator and the 100 together, notice it's aligned to the left. Hey, that'll work perfect for COUNTIFs. Criteria range. Well, where is the criteria? The criteria is crates. Remember, we're not trying to add here. We're counting, comma, and then the criteria, boop, close parentheses. There are 3. Now let's do the same thing for adding. This is text criteria, and we want to add crates for green kales. If we were doing this manually, we'd have to go, oh, green kale, get that number and remember it. There's a green kale. That means we matched our criteria true. Then we go over to this column, get that 76, and remember it. Keep going down. That's not green kale. Not green kale. This one is green kale. So we get that number, put it into our brain, and add it. No problem. I do not want to do that manually, so I'm going to use SUMIFS. The sum range, that's what's different about SUMIFs than COUNTIFs. You got to tell it what it's going to add. We're adding crates, so I'm going to highlight the whole crates column. Comma, criteria range. Well, what are we doing? We're looking through and trying to find green kale, so we better give SUMIFs the criteria range. That's all of the produced items, the whole column. Comma, and the criteria. Hey, which items do you want me to add crates for? I want you to add for green kale. Close parentheses. And so that's a lot easier than having to do it manually. Not only are we going to avoid errors because maybe our eyes missed some green kale, but for a huge data set, blistering fast. If we did it by hand, it would be horrible. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're adding crates, adding numbers from this column for all of the dates we find in this column that are 814. Equals SUMIFS, sum range. Remember, we got to give it some numbers to add, and we're adding crates, so the whole crate column. Comma, criteria range, date, the whole date column, all the dates. Comma, which of those crates in this blue column here do you want me to add? The ones from 814. Close parentheses, Control Enter. I love that. That is so much easier than doing it by hand. What you never want to do is sort the column and then add sums. Oftentimes in my class, people will turn in tests like that. Inefficient. If you have a huge data set with tons of dates, oh, that would be painful to do. All right, now this one, we're adding greater than 100. What we're doing here is we're looking through this column. The criteria column is crates, and we want to only find the ones where we sold greater than 100. Is this greater than 100? False. Is this greater than 100? True. So then we're going to take that number and add it. False. True. So we take that number and add it. All right, so you ready? Now I'm going to use the SUMIFs here, but if you're paying attention and you learned from earlier videos, Excel Basics 13, you'll notice something. Hey, let's use SUMIFs. Sum range. Hey, those are the numbers we want to add. We're adding crates, so I'm going to highlight the crates. Comma, criteria range. Which one of the ranges has our criteria? Oh, this is a case where the actual numbers being added and the criteria range are the same. We saw back in Excel Basics 13, you can, in this case, use SUMIF without the S. Now, because this video is about SUMIFs and COUNTIFs, we're going to do it here and practice with our sum range and criteria range. Comma, and then the criteria is greater than 100. Now remember, it's going to look through here. Only when it sees greater than 100 will it take the number and add. 401. We also in earlier videos learned a trick. On a small data set like this, you can check your number. I'm going to click in that cell and use my Control key to highlight cells not next to each other, and then look down in the status bar. That's so cool. It has all sorts of calculations. There's our sum, 401. Now, that's if you're doing this all the time, you actually don't want to use the SUMIFs. You'd want to do SUMIF. And the SUMIF would look like this. Remember the rule. Although the arguments in the screen tip are not quite as polite, if the sum range and the criteria range are the same, you can just enter it once into SUMIF. Now watch this. Comma, and then the criteria, I just have to enter it once. And I'll get exactly the same number. All right, now let's do two criteria. SUMIFs, COUNTIFs. They can do one or more. Our first example will be counting, and we'll use COUNTIFs. And then we'll come down here and try adding with SUMIFs. So let's do COUNTIFs. We're going to count. Now, the question here is when we have two criteria. I'm going to look through this data set, and I want to ask the question, how many dinosaur kale transactions did Chin have? That means this. I literally need to look through both this column and this column and ask two questions. Notice criteria 1, criteria 2. That means there's two questions. Is this equal to dinosaur kale? False. Is this equal to Chin? False. Is this equal to dinosaur kale? False. Is this equal to Chin? True. Now notice we have two criteria or conditions. Only when we get a true and a true are we allowed to count it. So finally, if we were doing dinosaur kale and Chin, this one would have true, this is dinosaur kale, and this one would have true, this is Chin. Only when it gets two trues will it count. So let's see, equals COUNTIFs. Now the criteria range 1, criteria 1 will come into play, because after we enter the 1s, then the 2s will pop up in our screen tip. All right, it doesn't matter at all in which order you enter these. I'm going to start with criteria 1, which is dinosaur kale. So I'll highlight. Remember, that says range, so it's the whole range. Comma, criteria 1, hey, that's dinosaur kale. Now, this is the first time we've done this. Comma, oh, criteria range 2. It's saying, which is the second column. So I'm going to go over, I have to find all the sales reps. So, comma, and then criteria 2. That's the Chin. Now, we already saw just a second ago how hard it would be to go through and match and find two trues for each column and then be writing it down to the side. But COUNTIFs, this amazing screen tip here goes out, I think it's like 255. Now, I've never seen something 255, but 2 and 3 and 4 criteria are common. Again, the question is, how many transactions did Chin have when he sold dinosaur kale? Close parentheses, control, enter. It's 2. Now, how about how many transactions do we have on 8/14 where we sold bananas? Equals COUNTIFs. Criteria range 1. And again, it does not matter in which order. You could start with the whole produce column or the whole date column. It doesn't matter. I'm going to start with criteria 1, the whole date. Remember, it says range there, comma, the criteria, only 8/14, comma, criteria range 2, it's going to be produce, the whole column. Notice it says range, comma, and then criteria 2, banana. I love this. I don't have to go through and eye this. It tells me there are 2. Now, if we did have to eye it, it would be something like, there's one transaction, there's another. All right, so, and I don't ever want to have to do that. Now, what about counting for tie? There's tie transaction, tie transaction. Again, we're starting off with a small data set, so as we're learning it, we can kind of eye it and make sense of it. I want to look for tie and also a transaction where tie sold greater than 75 crates. Well, I can see 1, 2, 3. So all 3 of his transactions. Oh, this one down here. See? Oh, I was eyeing it and I totally missed this one. I never want to have to try and eye it. Equals COUNTIFs. COUNTIFs is coming to the rescue so we don't have to eye. Again, it doesn't matter in which order you do it. I'm going to start with crates. That's the whole column, the range. Comma, criteria, only greater than 75. criteria range 2, SalesRep. That's the whole range, comma, criteria 2, tie. Control Enter, and better be 3. If I were to change this now from greater than 75 to 50, there better be 4. I'm going to Control Z to undo that. All right, now adding with 2 conditions. What are we going to do here? Hey, we want to add, this is sales column. Before we were using crates, now we're going to use the numbers to add from the sales. Hey, give me all of the total sales Chin had selling dinosaur kale. So we would literally have to go tell SUMIFS this whole column here, but then we'd have to look through SalesRep and produce, and only when we find dinosaur kale true, Chin true, would we take that number and add it. Dinosaur kale true, Chin true, take that number and add it. Don't want to have to do it longhand, so I'm using SUMIFS. The screen tip is polite. It says, what numbers do you want to add? We're doing sales. Comma, criteria range. Doesn't matter in which order you do this. All it needs is 2 trues. I'm going to start with the whole produce column. That's the range, comma, criteria, dinosaur kale. Criteria range 2, that's going to be SalesRep. That's the whole range, comma, criteria. Hey, Chin. Close parentheses. The difference between our COUNTIFs from above is that now we have a sum range. So instead of just counting, it's going to take the numbers and add them. There it is, 540. If we wanted to check this manually, oh, this ein stuff again. Boop. I used my control key. Look down there. That is amazing. And as you're learning this, you should do this. Prove it to yourself. I remember when I learned SUMIFs and COUNTIFs for the first time, it was like a mystery. But knowing that little control trick and checking on a small data set, you slowly start to understand the magic of Excel. All right, so we want to add up the total sales from this column when we sold bananas on 8/14 equals SUMIFS. Sum range, all the numbers to add. Comma, criteria range. Let's start with date. That's the range, the criteria, 8/14. Comma. I love these screen tips. So as we type a comma, it comes up bold and it's saying, hey, I need criteria range 2, which is going to be produce. Comma. What's our criteria? Banana. Close parentheses and enter. Absolutely amazing. Now we could add some number formatting here. Up here we wouldn't, because this is number of crates. If I wanted to add some number formatting, Control 1, currency, 0 decimals, click OK. Now for this one we want to look through, find all the sales rep. SU, where the actual sale amount was less than or equal to 1,000. So we literally need to look through equals SU, true. Less than or equal to 1,000, false. Equals SU, true. Less than or equal to 1,000, true. So we get 2 trues, so then we would add that number. All right, so you ready? Equals SUMIFS, the sum range. We got to tell it what we want to add. Comma, criteria range. I'm going to start with the actual sales numbers. Comma, and then criteria. Notice we can't use SUMIF here because we have 2 conditions or criteria. SUMIF without the S only does 1 condition. All right, so you ready? We have our criteria range 1 and criteria 1, comma, criteria range 2, SalesRep, comma, criteria 2, that's SU, close parentheses, Control Enter. That is amazing. And how would we have done this by hand, right? It would have been that number there. No, 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 I don't like doing this manually. Okay, so I've highlighted both of these with my control trick. Look down here. That is just amazing what SUMIFs and COUNTIFs can do. Now let's scroll down And look at another example for this same data set. Your boss comes in and says, add sales for each sales rep on each day. So here's how we do it. That's two conditions. Got to look through the date and find 8/14. Got to look through the sales rep and find chin, and then add. Now notice what we did is we put 8/14 in each one of our 3 sales rep, and then 8/15 in each one of our sales rep. So we can do a formula here and copy it down. Equals SUMIFS. Sum range, it's sales. We have to have some numbers we're adding for SUMIFS. So there it is. And I'm going to F4 and lock this. Comma. Criteria range 1. It does not matter in which order you do this. You could do sales rep first and then date. Or we could do date and then sales rep. I'm going to start with date. F4 to lock it. That's criteria range 1. The criteria, relative cell reference. Comma. Criteria range 2, sales rep. F4 to lock it. Comma. Criteria, chin. Relative cell reference. Close parentheses. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. Click in the last cell and hit F2. I'm loving that. And why is this 0? That's because Ty didn't sell any on 8/14. Ty was not there that day. And you could verify by going through and seeing, in fact, Ty only worked on the 15th. Now, one last example for this video here, and then you want to go do your homework problems at the end of this workbook. Lots of practice will help. Your boss comes in and asks for sales for each sales rep in the West. No problem. SUMIFS comes to the rescue. Notice if it's for each sales rep in the West, we can put a formula here that looks relatively as we copy down at the criteria, the first criteria. And then we'll also have to highlight the region column and have it look up here, absolute cell reference. So you ready? In J61 equals SUMIFS. We have to have some numbers to add when we're doing SUMIFS, and we're doing sales. The boss said sales. Control Shift down arrow. Whoa, that's a huge data set. F4 to lock it. Sum range, comma, criteria range. It does not matter in which order you do this. Either region or sales rep. I'm going to start with the region. Click in the top cell, Control Shift down arrow, F4 to lock it. Absolute, comma. If that's the whole region column, I need a single criteria. So I click on West, and guess what? This, as I copy down, I don't want it to move relatively. I want it locked, so I'm going to F4 that. Comma, the criteria range 2. Well, we got to do sales rep, right? Click in the top cell, Control Shift down arrow, F4. Yeah, so when the screen tips in the way you point to it, when you see that 4-way arrow, you can click and drag. Criteria range 2, comma. And the criteria, relative cell reference. Remember the boss said for each sales rep. Close parentheses. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. Click in the last cell, F2. That is amazing. All right, so in this video we saw a lot about SUMIFS and COUNTIFS. Later, a couple videos ahead, we'll learn more about pivot tables, and we'll see how to create reports like this using pivot tables. And as we mentioned before, the beauty of formulas is that if we change the criteria, so if I change this to north and hit Enter, instantly everything updates. If I change this back to west, instantly formulas update. All right, SUMIFS, COUNTIFS. We'll see you next video.